Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Theodore, and here is one truth I am realizing. Some betrayals are not forgivable. Not everything can be fixed with a conversation or swept under a rug with time. When my daughter stood in front of me and defended her mother's betrayal, I reached into my pocket, handed her a folded piece of paper, and I told her, "You've got 30 minutes. Pack your stuff. You're leaving this house." Some actions comes with consequences. Let me take you back to where it all started. 19 years ago, I met Ruby during our second year of college. I was drawn to her beauty, and I must admit she charmed me. We were both studying in different departments, but we bumped into each other a lot around the library and the cafeteria. At first, it was small talk, but those little conversations turned into longer talks that lead to dating. I was really in love with her from the day I got close to her. Back then, everything felt light. There were no bills hanging over our heads, no real responsibilities, just the promise of a future we could build together. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have someone like Ruby by my side. Then came graduation. We were barely out of school, trying to figure out our next steps, when Ruby found out she was pregnant. That news hit hard, not because I didn't want a child, but because I didn't feel ready. I had no solid job lined up yet, no savings to speak of, just a diploma and a lot of hope. But I told myself, this is what being a man means. Stepping up even when you're scared. We talked it over and decided to get married, even if it's just a quiet, simple ceremony with a few close friends and some family. A few months later, Maria was born. I was no longer just a man trying to figure out life. I was a father now. Ruby and I didn't have much, but we had each other and this little girl who depended on us for everything. That was how our family started. A young couple, barely out of college, doing our best to make something work in a world that didn't offer many shortcuts. Honestly, I was scared. Most of my friends were either still figuring out their paths or coasting on their parents' support. Me? I was waking up at 5 a.m., chasing any job that would put food on our table. Anything I could find, I did it. I pushed through. I was determined to make it work, even if it meant carrying the whole weight alone. Back then, I believed that building a home, no matter how slow or painful, was worth it. As my daughter grew, that bond only got deeper. I wanted her to have more than I ever had, even if that meant I had nothing left for myself. I never saw being her father as a burden. Not once. It was the most grounding, most meaningful thing in my life. By the time Maria started school, my wife, Ruby, decided it was time to return to work. I supported her choice. We'd been running things on my income alone for years, and while we managed, it wasn't always easy. So having her bring in a second paycheck felt like a relief. There was a rhythm to things. I'd get up early, help get Maria ready for school, then head to work. Ruby would pick her up later in the day, and we'd all eat dinner together. But time moves fast. Soon Maria was no longer my little girl chasing butterflies in the yard. She was now talking about college applications and majors. It all blurred together. Somewhere along the way, our baby girl had become a young woman. And with Maria growing up, I started to notice something else, something I couldn't quite explain at first. You know, when you've lived with someone for almost 2 decades, you start to notice even the smallest changes. It can be as subtle shifts in tone or in what's left unsaid. That's how it started with Ruby. Life had been moving fast. Maria was about to clock 19 years next month and was wrapping up high school, and college prep was already taking up most of our conversations. I figured maybe Ruby was just overwhelmed, like the rest of us. Then came this one moment I suggested we take a short family trip, just the 3 of us. I thought it would be a good way to reconnect before Maria left for college. I brought it up one evening while Ruby was on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she always did these days. She didn't even look at me, just muttered, "We'll see," eyes still glued to her screen. That moment hit me like a punch to the chest. It's hard to explain unless you've been there, but there's something soul-crushing about being waved off like that. I remember thinking, I've never seen a single human being who wants to be dismissed that way. After that, I started paying closer attention. Ruby was always with her phone in her hand, always with her screen turned just out of my line of sight. During dinner, she was there physically, but emotionally, she was somewhere else entirely. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, but the feeling wouldn't go away. I kept wondering, who is she always texting when we're supposed to be together as a family? I tried not to pry, but trust gets harder to hold onto when you feel like you're the only one still holding on. You know, sometimes life hands you answers you never went looking for. One day, Ruby had been having some trouble accessing one of her old email accounts and called me to help reset the password. Nothing unusual. She'd created that email years ago and had used my email address as the recovery contact. So when the reset link popped into my inbox, I clicked it, typed in a new password, and handed her the details. But right as I was about to close the page, something in me hesitated. I opened her iMessage. Most of the messages were nothing out of the ordinary, conversations with a few folks we both knew. I was just about to exit and pretend like nothing happened, when I saw one message with a name I didn't recognize. When I opened it, what I found was unexpected. The message opened to a conversation, an ongoing one, between Ruby and a man I'd never heard her mention. I scrolled through the exchange, and as I read, my heart began to sink. They weren't talking like old friends catching up. There was warmth. There was familiarity. There was emotion. I kept reading, trying to piece it all together, and the deeper I went, the more things stopped making sense. There were old photos, some of her and him, some selfies I don't remember her ever showing me. And the timeline, that was what really shook me. These messages had been going on for a long time. Quiet messages exchanged during nights. Words from him like it was always supposed to be us, and her replies that didn't exactly shut him down. Then I saw something that made my hands literally start shaking. He mentioned the time they reconnected during a short break in her relationship with me, right before we got married. That was the same time she told me she went to stay with her cousin to clear her head. Back then, I believed her. I mean, why wouldn't I? She came back, said she wanted to make things work, and not long after, she told me she was pregnant. We got married in a rush, thinking it was the right thing to do. 19 years later, I'm wondering if that entire timeline was a lie. I didn't take screenshots of everything, it was too much, and honestly, I was barely holding myself together. But I did manage to grab a few pieces of the conversation, just in case I'd need them later. I closed the app and sat in silence for hours. I was heartbroken and confused. And for the first time, I asked myself a question I never imagined would cross my mind. Was Maria even my daughter? I felt sick thinking it. That question alone was enough to stop me from confronting Ruby right away. I needed to be sure. I needed truth. So in the days that followed, I made arrangements behind everyone's back. Quietly, carefully. I collected the samples I needed, sent them off for testing, and waited for the answer that would either give me peace or destroy the life I thought I had built. It took about a week for the DNA test results to come in. And let me tell you, that was the longest week of my life. And when the envelope finally came in, I took it straight to my room. I sat on the edge of the bed before I opened it. She wasn't mine. Biologically, Maria was not my daughter. There's no manual that tells you what to do when you find out you've been lied to for nearly 2 decades. I just sat there for a long while, numb. Then something in me just snapped. I wasn't going to sit with this and pretend everything was normal. I had to confront Ruby. I waited until Maria wasn't home. I needed Ruby to hear this from me, without distractions. I walked into the living room and asked her one question. How long have you been in contact with X? She crossed her arms and said, "What are you talking about?" My anger grew, and I barked at her not to play with me. Her tone was defensive as she observed I wasn't bluffing. It's not what you think. I've only kept in contact. I haven't done anything with him. I stared at her. So you don't think keeping in contact with someone you clearly still have feelings for is cheating? I asked, keeping my voice as calm as I could. You lied to me. You built this family on a lie. You never told me there was a chance Maria wasn't mine. She fired back, avoiding the question. Why did you even going through my phone in the first place? That right there, that was the moment I realized she wasn't sorry. She turned it around to make me the bad guy, as if I had no right to seek the truth about my own life. Just then, Maria walked into the house. She had her backpack slung over one shoulder and earbuds in. She paused the moment she saw us. She looked from her mom to me, confused. "What's going on?" she asked, taking a step forward, pulling out one of her earbuds. Before Ruby could jump in and spin some version of the truth, I raised a hand slightly and said, "I found out that your mother has been in contact with her ex from her past. Someone I didn't know she was still speaking to." Maria's voice rose a bit, defensive by instinct. "Okay, but talking to an ex doesn't mean she's done anything wrong. Why are you making it sound like some huge betrayal?" I didn't argue any further. I just reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded DNA results. I handed it to her gently and said, "Read it." She looked confused as she unfolded the paper. Her eyes scanned the lines. Then she read it again. Her lips moved slightly as if trying to make sense of it. And then she stopped cold. I told her as calmly as I could, "You've got 30 minutes. Pack your things and leave this house." Ruby's mouth parted like she wanted to say something, but no sound came out. Maria sat there frozen, the paper trembling in her hands. I turned to Ruby one last time, holding back everything that wanted to break loose in my chest, and said, "You made me raise another man's child for 19 years. I will never forgive you." And then I left the room, because there was nothing left to say. Now that I've told you everything, it's been hard. I was deceived for 19 years, raising a child that wasn't even mine. I don't think there's a way to fully explain what that does to a man. What messes with my mind the most is not knowing if Ruby always knew the truth. Did she look at that little girl and lie to me every day with a straight face? Or did she manage to convince herself that it didn't matter, that the truth wasn't important because I was a good father anyway? I don't know. And the fact that I don't know just makes it all the more painful. Because even if she didn't plan to deceive me, she still chose to never tell me. She made that decision for me. She took away my right to choose what kind of life I wanted to live based on the truth. The role of a father isn't just biology, I get that. I lived it. But when that biological truth is tied to a betrayal that was buried under nearly 2 decades of silence, it becomes a wound you can't explain to anyone who hasn't lived through it. But through all this pain, I've learned a few things, lessons I want to share with anyone who might be listening, especially the men who might think, "This can't happen to me." Because I used to think that too. First, never ignore your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Distance in a relationship doesn't just happen, it starts somewhere. And often, it starts with deception. Pay attention when things change. Pay attention when communication fades, or when someone who once looked you in the eyes now hides behind their phone. That's not love pulling back. That's truth slipping away. Second, never assume loyalty just because you've sacrificed. You could give someone your whole life, your time, your money, your energy, and still not be enough for them to remain faithful. Love doesn't always equal loyalty, and loyalty doesn't always last. It's a hard truth, but one worth learning. And third, the truth always has a timeline. It doesn't matter how deep you bury it or how long it's been hidden. Eventually, it comes out. It took me 19 years to find mine, but it came. And when it did, it turned everything I knew upside down. So if you're holding on to something, if you're scared to dig for the truth because you think it might destroy you, just know this. Silence is more dangerous. Lies rot everything over time. But truth? As painful as it is, truth sets a boundary. It gives you a place to rebuild. To those watching, thank you for listening to my story. It's not easy sharing this, but if it helps even one person avoid the hell I've been through, then maybe some good can come out of it. Please like and share this video if you found it meaningful. And as for me, I'm still in the thick of it. The divorce battle with Ruby is ongoing, and let me tell you, it's been nothing short of war. But I'm standing my ground.